Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode, A New Era of Dentistry, with your host, Ashley Bond, and co host, myself, Stephenie Neville. Full transparency, we had planned to have guest speaker Shelley DeGraff from PPO Advisors on today to do a deep dive with some credentialing how to's, but we decided to go ahead and pivot due to what Ashley and some of our other team members were out and about doing last week. Ashley, you want to go ahead and explain that?
Absolutely. So, just got back from Accelerate Dental Revenue Workshop, which was in Indianapolis, which was so much fun. Thank you, Vine, for hosting us. But I was able to speak on insurance breakdowns and breaking down the insurance breakdowns. So, I thought that would be a great topic to bring up today to all of you. And is super excited that Shelly will be with us next week so that we'll be able to hear all the good information that she's going to bring. So today we get to break down the insurance breakdown
Sweet.
form. Yay, who doesn't
I
love
mean,
that?
break it down, baby. Break it
Let's
down.
do it. S- And so what, I feel like the insurance breakdown form is the first thing you give to a new hire or potentially someone that might not have as much dental experience. So my key focus on this presentation was really letting people know how significant the insurance breakdown form is and how it is the first stop to your full revenue cycle management. And if you get that wrong in the beginning, the consequences to that can be devastating. And I have many, many stories on how I got it wrong. And hopefully, what I did wrong, I can help share so that others don't have to be in the same position that I was in. And when I spoke to the dental billers in Indianapolis, I really wanted to explain the why they're so important. Three key reasons I think it's so important is the patient experience. So we have to have amazing patient experiences in our office because there's so many dentists to pick from. So how can we make sure we're giving our patients the best estimation that we possibly can? Because if you don't, you really lose trust with those patients. It helps offices collect 100%, which our goal is always to collect as much as we can. It's not just about production. We need to really focus on the collection piece and then our own growth and credibility. When I got into the dental field, I had no idea what I was doing, and it is like a foreign language. So, even using the breakdowns to ask questions. And if I got a good representative, like, what does this waiting period mean? Or okay, it's the non-duplication, like coordination of benefits. What does that mean? Can you help explain that to me? You can really use these calls to help with your own growth and credibility. So I'm super excited to jump right in and talk about some key areas that I think the why behind it that I think will be helpful for anybody in the field, whether you've been around forever or you're brand new to the space, and how breakdowns can help you and help your team.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
something I want to hit on too is
let's
even if, sorry,
yes.
here I go. Um, Even if there weren't a lot of dentists to choose from, I was going to say, as far as dentistry goes, I think a lot of patients are afraid of surprise dental bills, even more so than medical, because of just the difference in how it
Mm,
works. So, as a unified front, if we can all as a team, right, kind of tamp that off by making sure we get good breakdowns and people get fewer surprise bills.
absolutely. And you know what? That's a great segue because part of my patient experience, what I always say is patients don't mind paying their dental bills. What they do mind is paying surprise dental bills. So, how can we take the surprise out of it? And that really starts with insurance breakdowns. I've had many experiences. In the presentation I did, I used the example of John, not real patient name, but real story that happened to me, where he got new insurance, had been putting off his crown, came in, got the procedure done. He was so excited. He was going to pay 50%. Insurance was going to pick up the rest. Few weeks later, comes back, no payment. John had a waiting period for crowns. And that was a piece of the puzzle I did not put together. We got that there's 50% coverage. We put it into our software, gave him the treatment estimate, but did not get that little detail about waiting periods. And that patient specifically was very upset. again, it wasn't necessarily that he was upset that it was a surprise. He was upset that we gave him this treatment plan and then it drastically changed, doubled his cost, and he wasn't prepared for that. Doesn't mean that we don't diagnose and recommend treatment still, but it's giving the patient clear expectations and what their portion's going to be, because a surprise $500, $600 bill, not a great surprise. I rather surprise them with a credit always than with an invoice. So unfortunately, John was not very happy, wrote a very negative Google review for us. He ended up never coming back to the practice. He was that upset. We lost the trust in him. And unfortunately, there are many situations that I've been through like this with our patient experience, that because I didn't understand the gratitude in the beginning of how important insurance breakdowns are, that it affected our patients. So one of many stories that, I mean, another one that would happen often was full mouth series x-rays. New patients would come in. We always would do an FMS. If you don't get that frequency, if they're due for it, that new patient could owe over $100 from their first visit. If you don't, you need to let them know ahead of time. Doesn't mean we don't do the treatment, but at least we can prepare them. This is going to be your cost. This is why we need this x-ray. Yes, we can get them transferred from another dentist, but if they're not of diagnostic quality, we're going to have to retake them. And this is how much it's going to be. This is why it's important to get it done. So it's just setting up the patient for the expectations ahead of time so they don't get that bill in the mail and write the negative Google review that everyone is so scared of getting from
Yeah,
patients.
for sure. You just reminded me too, as far as that language goes, when you're talking to patients, hey, you have a waiting period, but you still need the treatment. Don't let insurance
Right.
dictate when you handle your oral health. We actually have a webinar on our website with wisdom.com. If you go to resources and videos, we've got a great webinar in there that will help you with this exact language, just a segue from the breakdown and talking to patients about that. Just wanted to put that in there real quick. And we have a follow-up webinar
Yeah.
coming up next week too. So make sure you go to our website and check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for this next webinar coming up. It's about, handling objections to scheduling, and there's always a reason not to schedule. So how can we handle those common themes that we always come across when at the front office when we're trying to set their treatment? And hopefully this breakdown of the insurance breakdown form can at least help us give best
Mm-hmm.
estimates. And then next week, let's tackle how to then go over their objections and get them to still schedule. But with the patient experience, that's why they're so important. Not giving patients surprise bills. And then we come to collecting 100%. So that's always what we should be striving for in the practice. Healthy, successful practices are collecting at least, if not over, 98%. If you don't currently run your collection percentage, I highly recommend that you run that monthly to get a good baseline, though, on where you're at now. What you want to do in your practice management software is take your last 12 months of collections, so total collections. You're going to divide that by your last 12 months of net production. So that's production after adjustments. Then multiply that number by 100. That is your collection percentage. See where you all are at.
I'm going to do it again. Guess
Yes.
what? We just released a blog post about what reports to run and how to get your collection percentages and how often you should run them. So, again, hop over to our website with wisdom.com, click on resources, and it's one of the most recent. I think it's listed, it's 4 down as far as reporting goes, if you want that in writing.
Yes. I mean, the numbers tell the
Yeah.
story. They don't tell you everything, but they can tell you if something's broken. So if your collection percentage is under the 98 percentile, there might be a reason. As long as you were able to explain why, maybe the doctor did some charity work and for somebody, but we need to know the reason why if it's under 98%. So make sure you get a baseline. Where have you guys been the last year? And then continuously, I would check month over month. Where are you at? You can run the last 3 months to get kind of where you've been quarterly. But it's just your total collections divided by your total net production, times it by 100. That is your collection percentage. So aim for at least 98%. Huge factor in it is these insurance breakdowns. Um, and it's all in the details. So you might think, when you're getting an insurance breakdown form of, oh, I'm just going to get the basic. I don't need to get every single detail. And for our busy dental offices, it's hard because you have to wait on hold for so long. But even the little details are so important. I recommend seeing what the patients are coming in for. If you see a patient's coming in, and they have a night guard on their plan, okay, well, we need to know beyond just it's 80% coverage. We need to know if it's covered for bruxism or is it only covered after perio surgery. Two drastic different things. So if you see on a fax back it's covered at 80%, you submit that claim, comes back unpaid because you did it for bruxism, the patient's not going to be very happy. So all the little details are so important. With the breakdown forms, before new patients come in, I highly recommend that you have every cleaning possible. You don't know what type of cleaning they're going to be. So the benefits for a prophy, SRP, full mouth debridement, know what the benefits are for all of those so that you can quickly get the patient scheduled or do same day and give them an accurate estimate. Full mouth debridements are, you never know what it's going to be. Could be 100, 80, 50. It could be once in a lifetime, once a year. It's all different for different plans. So making sure you have that information before they come in so you don't have to have them wait, delay the cleaning that they might need, or just give them the wrong estimate because you just took, what the fax back said and didn't check frequency. So all of those little details are just so important.
What advice or insight do you have for I'm sure there are a lot of practices that think that have the mindset, I'm out of network, I'm not in network. And perhaps even the patient, they might submit for the patient on their behalf or the patient submits it. Um, what insight do you have as far as how this pertains to them? Because it's still important to make sure they're eligible.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. And, my father's practice was only a network with Delta Premier. We were out of network with most insurance companies, most patients that we saw. But that did not mean insurance breakdowns were not super vital in the practice. So, what that means is a few things. So, if I'm getting a breakdown, I typically like to ask how they base their fees. Is it off a fee schedule or is it off the UCR? You'll get some representatives that will, maybe even send you the fee schedule. It's very rare on what they'll pay if you're out of network. Sometimes you can give them a few codes in your fee. They can tell you if you're within the guidelines. Sometimes they just don't say. I knew the plans that would come in for us in our area, Anthem, typically was on a fee schedule. So even though they say it's 100%, I knew it was 100% of $15. So it's not truly 100% coverage. So being comfortable explaining that to your patients, before the patients would come back, we would explain your plans on a fee schedule, what that meant. We can't guarantee what they're going to cover. This is the amount of the full visit. We're hoping they'll cover a portion of it, but we can't guarantee it. They won't release that information to us. That's how we handled those. But still, you can get the benefit breakdown and get as close to an estimate as you can. Again, I rather you overcollect than undercollect. If there's a downgrade on billings, overcollect for that because to expect there's going to be a downgrade. Let the patient know that they're planned downgrades when you're collecting. So you can answer those questions. When I gave them a bill or their receipt at the end, I would always say, once we get insurance back, if there's any difference in what you owe, you'll get a statement in the mail. Just sets the stage that they might get a statement in the mail. And then being out of network, updating payment tables is so crucial. When you're posting payments, make sure you're updating what's truly paid. So for instance, if you're out of network and it's a pro fee, your charge is $100. They say it's 100% coverage, but their 100% is $95. When you go to post that payment, update the payment table to $95. So when anyone on that plan comes back, this plan, while it's 100% coverage and the coverage, the insurance benefits, the payment table overrides that and says, oh, but this plan covers only 95. So we need to collect $5 at time of service. And please collect those few dollars at time of service. There's so many offices that have little balances across so many patients. Those little balances definitely add up. So just collect what your practice management software tells you. That's my biggest advice. Checking out a patient confidently, tell them what their estimated account balance is, and just collect it. The worst thing is you collect too much, they have a credit that you can give back to them.
Yeah. What else, since, you know, we've seen nationwide just different offices and we're able to see trends, we're kind of blessed to have that when it comes to talking about these things. I think one major thing that is missing in notes or from breakdowns when offices are overwhelmed is missing tooth claws. I think that in the
Mm-hmm.
office, it definitely impacted myself, but I've also seen it impact reimbursements greatly because that's missing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're performing implants, bridges, you need to have your missing tooth clauses in there. So, again, what I would do is run the codes that your office uses the most besides preventative, run the top 10, 20 codes that your office is doing and may customize your breakdowns off those codes. So if you do implants, if you do bridges, missing tooth clause is so important. If there's no gap in coverage, say the employer changed plans, there's been no gap in coverage, sometimes you too can appeal that missing tooth clause if you can prove that even though they switch insurance companies, the employer never gapped insurance. So if you find yourself in that situation, use that tactic to appeal it. But if you don't get the missing tooth clause, you do implant, you do bridges, you'll find yourself um, in not good light with the patients when they get that bill that unfortunately it's not covered at all because they have a missing tooth clause. And it's so unfortunate to have that missing tooth clause. So very important that you're checking that if that's the type of dentistry that you perform.
Absolutely. And there are always really high lab fees associated with those too. And then you have that
Mhm.
PPO aspect as far as taking write offs to even try to assuage any patient anxiety after the fact. So it's something that's a lot easier to prepare for and be accurate than to react to. That's definitely a tricky one.
Oh, yeah. And, insurance breakdowns take a lot of time, but I can tell you the time, the few minutes you spend doing it ahead of time is can save you hours on the back end. Hours with the patient that's unhappy, hours trying to collect on something that you didn't collect at time of service. So I know it's hard to get breakdowns for patients, but it's a lot easier than dealing with the aftermath if you don't get it correct. So just go in, try your best, have your breakdown for your office that's customized, ask all the questions, and then make sure if you're writing down the breakdown, don't stop there. Put it back in your practice management software. Make sure your PMS is 100% accurate to the details that you got because garbage in, garbage out. If it's not in your system, the claim your estimates are not going to be accurate, what you collect from the patient's not going to be accurate. It needs to be right in the practice management software. And this when we asked our team too, what's the number one reason that you see rejections? We get time and time again, it's patient demographics and insurance demographics. So part of your insurance breakdown form should have the insurance company's details. And sometimes that can get overlooked, like, oh, it's just address, phone number, payer ID. That is so important to get the absolute correct insurance address, payer ID, group plan number, group plan name. Same with the patient, the right patient name. When I called an insurance company, I would verify the patient's information that they have on file. Say you're using a nickname and the insurance company has their legal name, or say that you have date of birth wrong, say you have the patient address wrong. All of that can stop claims from being paid. So that is not just something you can just take without confirming with the insurance company first. So the small things like patient demographics, insurance demographics, number one reason for rejections. Do not overlook it. So important. And then update your practice management software to reflect what the insurance has on file.
Yeah. And if they have something different than what the patient gave you, communicate with your patient, because sometimes HR, they make mistakes. It happens, and it can keep claims from getting paid as well.
Oh yeah, we have patients that we see this a lot with getting married. So if you get there's a name change after someone gets married, making sure you're using the right last name. And then if there is any discrepancies, communicating with the patient to make sure that if something's been updated, HR knows on their side so they can update it with insurance. Same with date of birth. We've had, the insurance has had the wrong date of birth for a patient, and so they weren't paying our claims. So we had to have the patient contact their HR to get the date of birth switched in the system so that their claims could get paid. So little things like that are going to throw your payments off.
Absolutely. And you may be verifying on a portal and be able to pull the patient up through the member ID and say, and the birth date's okay, but the name is different. You can't ignore that. Even though you validated that they're eligible, but you have something different in your PMS that goes on the claim's going to get denied. So just all of those finite details as far as patient demographics and insurance demographics go, like Ashley said, it's essential. It's the very first step in your revenue cycle management. So you cannot overlook or shove those things under a rug.
Yes. And I think it might be helpful too if we just walk through a breakdown form and I can kind of just spit out what do these things mean. So in case you have someone that's newer up front, you could share this with them so they know, oh, when they're asking about effective date, this is why it's important. So I'm just going to shoot down this list. We also have this free resource that we can provide to you as well. Just shoot us an email, info@withwisdom.com. That breaks down the insurance breakdown form. You can use it as a training tool. And then again, when you're on the calls with insurance companies, ask them questions. If you don't understand, Google. Google is such a blessing. ChatGPT is such a blessing. If you don't understand something, you can't. It's all at your fingertips. So just ask questions until you feel confident. But let's break this down a little bit. So we have the insurance and patient details, which we already talked about. Biggest reason for insurance denials, making sure the insurance patient details are correct. Fee schedule or UCR, that again, I kind of touched on for being out of network. How do they base their fees? You need to be asking if you're out of network, how they do assignment of benefits. That's going to tell you if they pay the office or they pay the patient. If there's no assignment of benefits, your payment is going to go to the patient. So you need to make sure to be collecting at time of service for that. Otherwise, sometimes patients think they get I got paid by insurance, not knowing, oh, this is not mine. Like this is actually for the office. So watch out for that, especially emergency visits. You might never see that money again if you don't have a relationship with that patient. So assignment of benefits, super important. Asking if it's a calendar or benefit year. So a typical plan renews every January. So you know their benefits are good January through December. However, there are some plans that are random months that they renew, June, March, September. So you need to know, so your practice management system knows to reset insurance benefits once their benefit year hits. Because that maximum, say they have a September plan, their maximum renews at September. So their all of it is based off their benefit year date. So highly recommend paying attention to that. Most of the time you're going to run into calendar year plans, but not always. And I have another situation where I didn't know. It was a June benefit year. And unfortunately, we then undercollected from the patient and they had a big surprise bill. Coordination of benefits. We have a long cheat sheet on coordination of benefits. So they're, standard, non-duplicate. But if you work with primary and secondary, it's very important to know how coordination of benefits work and who to have as who to have as primary and secondary. We have a cheat sheet on that. But then also, how do those work together? How do the plans work together? Is it going to be where secondary doesn't pick up anything until they hit their maximum? Or are they going to coordinate up to, secondary's allowed amount? It changes how you post payments. So please pay attention to coordination of benefits if you have primary and secondary plans. Effective date. This is really crucial for waiting periods, missing tooth clauses. So their effective date is going to tell you when the patient's coverage started. So making sure you pay, or also coordination of benefits. Effective date is important. So again, getting those questions answered are going to help you fill in the blanks for the other benefits that you're checking. Waiting period, I learned the hard way. That's very important to get if there's waiting periods on any type of procedures. So you can override your system that there's no coverage until that waiting period is over. Missing tooth clauses, again, if you do implants and bridges, basically you need to know if what a missing tooth clause means is if there is one, if that tooth was extracted before they had coverage with this plan, anything to restore that space or where that missing tooth is isn't going to be covered. So you have to make sure that if there is a missing tooth clause, they're going to know when that tooth was extracted. If it was extracted before the patient had the plan, they're likely not to cover some of the benefits depending what treatment you're doing. So that is why missing tooth clause is so important. Back on waiting period. So what a waiting period is basically if it's a 6-month waiting period on crowns, we aren't going to cover crowns at all until the patient has the plan for 6 months or 12 months or whatever that length of time is. Annual maximums remaining, basically how much dollars do they have to spend for the benefit year, calendar year. Sometimes there's a rollover, so knowing and understanding what that is. And sometimes preventative does apply. Sometimes preventative doesn't apply. So that, again, is going to help you give the best estimates to the patients. Deductibles, usually the standard's 50 individual, 150 family, but that's not always the case. So making sure you're getting the deductibles in there, they're in your system. Then when you're posting payments, making sure you're updating once the patient pays that deductible. So there is an extra spot. You have to put the deductible in when posting so that it tells your system they've hit their deductible. Coverage percentages, what is preventative, basic, and major services covered at, and what's covered within each category. Sometimes you have x-rays that aren't under the preventative percentage, they're under the basic percentage. So making sure you know what procedures are covered under the different percentages. And then last, what I'll speak on is frequency. Frequency is so important. And we have, again, a cheat sheet on the different codes that this is so crucial in finding out. But frequency is going to tell you how often the insurance allows a procedure to get paid. Again, does not mean that you don't perform the treatment. Our 4910s perio maintenances, typically we recommend 4 per year. A lot of plans only cover 2 per year. That doesn't mean you don't do 4 per year. It just means the patient knows 2 of them are going to be out of pocket. So we have a breakdown really of frequency tips, what to look for. With preventative, be looking for how they pay those cleanings and exams, especially if it's once every 6 months. Don't have that patient come in before then. They're not going to cover it. So I love my 2 per year plans. Same with 2 and 12 months. They make you do math to figure out 2 and 12 months to me means once every 6 months plus a few days, because I just want to be sure that this is going to be covered. And if not, the patient wants to come in early, that's fine. Here is your estimate for what that's going to be.
That was a great recap of the form. And again, a lot of what we've mentioned today, you can find in our resources on withwisdom.com. And if you can't find it, just email us info@withwisdom.com and we'll get you whatever you need to help support your collections and any facet of your revenue cycle, or even just supporting your team in your office. That's why we do what we do. And that being said, I think that pretty much wraps us up for today. So we're going to head on out of here, and we're looking forward to seeing you all next week. with Shelley DeGroff. We're really excited about that one.
Yes, have a good rest of your week. I'll see you guys next week.